Kim. Hello, Corey.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. You guys are calling us from where again?
Haines City, Florida.
It looks really nice. We've got snow here and everything.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 86 today.
Oh my God. Okay, then. So we will start with just the introductory questions. So, how long did you both work in a prison?
I did 32 and a half years.
32 and a half years.
Yep.
I think I did 17 before I retired.
Okay. Which prison did you guys work at?
Worked at several, but we actually worked at Quentin Correctional Facility the longest.
Then we retired from there.
Okay, so you worked at two prisons and you both worked at the same prison at the same time?
Yep.
Yep.
That's cute.
Ah,
Okay. So we got where, when. Here we go. Let me just grab this. So, sorry. Why did you choose to work in in this field of work? Like, why prisons?
Well, it was not a lot in the area that we live in that you can do and have an actual retirement and benefits and all that. So that had a lot to do with it.
yeah.
Health insurance for the family and stuff like that. So that had a lot to do with the decision to go the route I went.
Same with me. It was better than working in the hospital or made more money.
Okay. So, it was something to do other than the limited jobs that were available and it had a lot of good benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. All right, so now that we've got some, introductory, we've placed you, you've been working in a prison a long time, you've worked in more than one, why you did it. Now we're going to talk a bit about prison reform, which, as I mentioned, is our group's topic. So just to start, do you guys know of any maybe local or national organizations? Yeah, you might have heard of any?
As far as what?
Prison reform goes. Like, are there any?
Who did we used to have that came in? They were like watchdogs.
So, prisoners legal services.
Yeah.
Prisoners Legal Services, that's what they were called?
Yeah, that's
and
what they were called.
They were like watchdogs. They would come in and the inmates would do complaints to them, or
they would investigate the complaints and see if it was true or not, that type of thing.
Okay, that
reform type things, no, I don't. Any major reform type things, no, there was nothing.
Okay.
Well, working.
As you know, this generation of ours now likes to protest a lot. Have you maybe heard or on the news or maybe even nearby any protests going on about prison reform?
Actually, no, haven't heard anything around nearby. I know here in Florida, they're very short of help in prisons now, and same in New York and all that, where we were from. They're very short of help. They can't seem to get people to take the job now. Versus when there were all kinds of people that would take the job. So, like you say, it's the generation and the different type things, and they aren't finding that job something they want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that is true. There's a lot of jobs that, people maybe it was once the most popular job and now it isn't, or vice versa. It was a job that wasn't very popular and that is now gaining popularity. So as far as it goes, there's not a lot of local prison reform around, and you don't really hear of any.
Not really.
And I didn't hear of any in New York going on.
Okay, so of your current knowledge, it still seems that you guys have a bit of knowledge, it's like for prison reform. Is there anything that you might have heard of or that like has been said about these groups that you maybe agree or disagree with?
New York State initiated because first of all, we were in a state facility, not a county facility. Okay. So state, and just a quick thing is Quentin is the largest max in New York State, third oldest and the largest max facility in New York State. Anyway, they started a new act. They call it the HALT Act, and it was done to cut down on the time that they were put in the special housing units for misbehaving. And it's actually created a very violent area now because there is no correction correctional type behavior for if they do something wrong, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, okay.
So as far as any reform, they're trying to work on that and make that work obviously better, because now they were saying that they were getting locked up in the special housing unit too long. Now they get put in the housing unit and it's they're not in there very long, and then they're put back out. So there's no disciplinary type thing to correct them from doing, you know, if I'm not going to be in that area that long, then why do I have to worry about, you know, what's going to happen to me? I'm just going to go there for 7 days, let's say, and then I'm going to be brought back out. So there's no discipline type situation going on.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is like with this current system of like these houses there, are these houses that prisoners go to when they're kind of in the process?
it's a house, they call it the special housing unit, or in terms, jail terms, the box. It's a cell. They're locked in their cell. They're locked in their cell for 23 hours of the day, and they're allowed out for 1 hour of recreation. They're fed and everything. All three fed in their cells. They actually have, depending on, this is an older box, so they're taken out of their cell, brought to the shower, and then they shower by themselves, obviously, and then brought back to their cell and locked back in their cell.
All right. And it sounded like you were saying before it was like people were complaining like, oh, we're in here too long, and now they've kind of made it shorter. But now, like from the eyes of like the law, you know, it seems like since they realize they're in here a lot less time, they don't really need to build up a good reputation because they know they'll be out soon. That's
exactly
okay.
Exactly. Yep. So like if it was when I first started, it was unheard of to have pretty much an inmate attack an officer. Now they attack an officer and they don't think anything of it because they'll be back out in say 14 days, 15 days, you know, where before if they'd attacked an officer, they'd have been locked up for years at a time for attacking.
Yeah. And do you know why some of these changes came into place over time, or?
Not sure why the changes came into place for New York State and why they went as extreme as they went. You know, you think they'd have taken their time and done it a little slower, but I really don't know, because like I said, this went into effect and I was retiring at the time. So I'm going by some things I've heard from, you know, my fellow workers that I still am in touch with and stuff.
All right. Because yeah, we see like there's like a whole specific other kind of charge or felony where, like, you know, if you assault, you know, a normal person, a civilian as they call it, you get a certain charge. And then there's one for like a police officer or a peace officer who's on duty. Like for that, you get a whole extra charge. And now like, here in prison, like, you know, it's kind of like just part of the job. They tell you that you might get attacked. So when you have these like easing of restrictions coming in, that is basically not incentivizing, but it's loosening and lessening the repercussions of attacking a guard. That's gotta be something to worry about, especially as you're about to retire there.
Exactly. That's what's basically happened in New York State. And that's one of the things that's stopped them from getting anybody to take the job.
That is unfortunate. Kim, is there anything you'd like to add before we move on to the next question?
Well, I was more in the medical part of it, so, but I did go to the shoes and that, but a lot of, I think mental health factors into it also. There's mental health, because they're a different agency, but they're in the jail, they're in the prison. I think they had a lot to do with a lot of the changes that were made.
Yeah.
So the mental health group in the prison, they're kind of in charge of keeping track of the mental health of the prisoners and the guards, or just the prisoners?
Prisoners.
Okay, do the guards have their own separate mental health service in the prison or no?
No, not in the prison, but we can get any mental health we want with our insurance and all that stuff. It's covered. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And Kim, you said that you felt like a lot of the changes that happened were to help or to like improve the mental health of prisoners. It was done by this group in the prison, kind of, or at least pushed for.
Pushed for, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And now we'll just do one more prison reform question. Uh, so I'll ask you first, when you hear the word prison reform, what comes to mind? Like if I told you they're doing a prison reform, but I didn't show you what it was on the news, what would you assume that meant?
An overhaul.
An overhaul? And how would you think that overhaul would look? Like what would be different?
Oh God.
You
I
know,
would say trying to reform would be like maybe do different disciplinary system adjustments and stuff like that. Like she says, an overhaul, maybe more mental health help for them if they need it, except, stuff along that lines. Not necessarily, I wouldn't think it would mean necessarily a reform would be anything like changing the prison at all as far as structurally or anything like that. I believe the reform would be maybe offering more programs, schooling, that type of thing.
yeah. It might, yeah, a lot of people agree with that too. It might not be things you can physically see, like the rebuilding the prison, but
Right.
there's a lot going on within the prison walls, that would change systems and everything and kind of the whole mentality. And then with this prison reform, like what you just said, in how long do you think realistically, if it were to occur, we could see that happening? A decade, a century, maybe longer?
Um, I would say it take easily 10 to 15 years, 20 years. It would take a while. It's not going to happen overnight for sure. The reform process and stuff. There's a lot of things that the whole time I was in that the state tried to do, and some of it worked, some of it didn't work, and had to be revamped or redone, to make even just running the prison itself, because of the limitations of the buildings and the limitations of the type of stuff that's there. Sometimes their thought process of doing this works and sometimes it don't. So it would be the same thing with reform for sure. You try to do this and that might work, and then this one might not work. So you got to go back to the drawing table and try something different.
I'm still surprised though. 10 to 15 years, I expected higher. 10 to 15 is pretty low. Like that is, 10 to 15 years, but in the historical point of view, that's like a drop in the ocean. I thought it would be a lot harder to change stuff with, current employees, current prisoners having to adapt to the new system, and then those coming in, the court systems might have to change something if reform also includes like laws too.
Well, yeah, that's true. It did have to start. Your reform system is going to start one end and then work its way through. But depending on what they're trying to change and stuff, like I said, it could take 25 years, 30 years. It could take 10, depending on how drastic the change is and what they're trying to do.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. I really like that answer. Thank you. So that's all for prison reform. Now it's just, some concluding questions, some things that might be interesting for the viewers. What is your most memorable event while working in a prison? What you'll never forget, good or bad? Hopefully it's not bad.
Oh gosh.
It's a lot to choose from.
That's definitely a lot to choose from.
You can pick more than one. We have the time.
It was when an inmate said thank you for helping him. He had mouth cancer, and I pushed for him to get into the dentist because they didn't want to get him in. And it turned out he had cancer in his mouth. So he was like my best friend for the entire time. Yeah.
I mean, you always hear of these stories about like how prisons can be like so cruel and so vile, and like it's amazing to see that. Well, amazing, but also a bit sad. But I'm still glad somebody said thank you. But I'm glad that stuck out to you. It's not like all people in prison are bad either. You don't know the reason someone ended up there. I think that's a big misconception. That
very big misconception.
Yeah.
That's not something we're in the know of what somebody's in there for. Obviously, there's hearsay, and some of them are tell others what happens, and you find out through grapevine type things. But For the most part, no, we're not in the know of why they're in. It's not something we're in the know of as far as officers and nurses.
Yeah, we're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
Okay. And Corey, what was your most memorable moment working in the prison?
Probably when I first started was it's changed over time, obviously, but when I first started, if you showed an inmate respect and they in turn showed you respect. So early in my career, when they call them porters that would do the cleanup around the building and stuff like that, I would always say, hey, listen, mop that floor for me, please. And I'd always say please and thank you and stuff. And I had one inmate come to me and say, Mr. F, he says, why do you say please? You don't have to say please. And I said, well, you haven't given me a reason to show you any disrespect. So I show you the respect, and I know you have to do it if I tell you to, but I prefer not to tell you. I just say, hey, please. And he was very acceptive to that, and he liked the way I approached it, and he goes, well, you're welcome, he says. So that's on the good side. I can remember a lot of bad stuff, but we aren't going to get into that.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I'm glad that both your memories are not only good, but they're little heartwarming stories. I liked hearing that. It also puts a good spin on the prisoners. Like we know that not all prisoners are bad people, but this is just another piece of evidence to prove it.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
All right. And then my next question is, in your opinion, whether it's qualities, maybe physical stature, mentality even, what would you say are the top 3 things? I'll ask you each. You can decide the order you go in. What are the 3 things that you think someone absolutely must have if they want to work in a prison? And maybe something that they absolutely cannot have if they want to work in a prison.
Me first.
Yeah, you're the lady.
Probably empathy. You have to have empathy. You gotta have compassion, but you also have to have thick skin. You can't let everything you see bother you, even though a lot does. You can't take it home, so you have to be able to set it aside.
Yeah, I hear that about a lot of jobs about leaving work at work. I'm sure this must be one of the main jobs it applies to. But yeah. I also like that you said compassion and empathy, because you do have to have a caring side as much as you have to be tough. You also got to show compassion.
The 3 things we're taught when we first go into the department is be firm, be fair, and be consistent. And that for sure has carried me through my entire career.
That's nice. So that's like literally like kind of a slogan that they tell you right when you get in. Those are like the 3 affirmations.
Yep. Firm, fair, and if I didn't know something, I would always say no. And then if it was something they were allowed to have, I obviously changed and said, okay, yes, you can have it, and I'll make sure you get it. And that's just something you did, and it's got a lot of friends through their career and everything. It's just something that definitely in the prison system you have to do as an officer.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And then my final question, unless you guys want to have some little spotlight to say stuff after, was there anything that surprised you, or maybe isn't like as we see it on TV, about prisoners or even other guards, or just anybody in the prison? Is there anything that stuck out, maybe exceeded your expectations, or you were like, wow, that's different, that's not what I expected?
Not really.
No, me.
I mean, I can say there's a lot that happened in jail that I said, well, that's different, but jail is jail, and that's what happens. Yeah,
we all took care of each other.
Yeah, you definitely watched each other's backs. That's top of the line. Whether it be the nurses watching my back, or me watching theirs, or the teachers, or we all looked out for each other. I mean, it's just the way it was when you go inside the wall. That's just the way it is.
All right. That is like the perfect start to a book. All right. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
No, pretty
No.
much. Pretty much.
I can't get over that weather you guys are having there. Oh my God.
Gonna
Well,
be 80 something today. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous out. Yeah.
it's,
We got here
Very
October
nice.
17th, and I've been in shorts ever since.
Jesus. All right. Well, then that's all your time that I'll ask you for. Thank you so much, Kim and Corey. I appreciate you seeing me today.